And our spiritual message, the title this Sunday, is Roaring into Our Greatness. So this month we're looking at the idea of the circle of life. The circle, the cycle, this thing called life, of which we are each an important part, is an ongoing series of beginnings and endings, of openings and closings, of hellos, goodbyes, and yes, even of births and deaths. As I stressed last week, there's something very important to know about this circle. It's not static. It's not a closed circle. It does not loop back upon itself. Rather, it's ever expanding, ever transcending, ever growing upward and outward. So think of a cyclone almost, as it gets bigger and goes up, right? Or in the words of Science of Mind founder Dr. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind on page 387, the spiral of life is upward, eternal and progressive. Expansion is its law, and there are no breaks in its continuity. Each Sunday this month, inspired by the lessons from The Lion King, which is a Disney movie for those who don't know, we are exploring this upward spiral of life. As a recap of the story, because of some tragic events, our hero, the lion cub, Simba, leaves his home and his family, forgetting that he is the rightful king of Pride Rock. He wanders for quite a long time, having some interesting and even fun adventures, but not fulfilling his life's purpose. It takes Rafiki, a wise old baboon, to remind him first of who he is and second of his place. We spent last week on the concept of finding our place, and I gave you a very specific homework assignment. I don't know if anybody did that. There's extra copies out there if you'd like to do it. I'm not going to even ask if you did it, but I'm going to encourage you to do so if you did not. And if you were not here last week and you have no clue of what I'm talking about, my talk is already on the website, so you can listen to it. So I'm getting pretty good at loading it onto our website quickly. So far, so good. So today we're going to expand on the idea of finding our place in this ever upward, ever progressive, ever expanding circle by exploring what it takes to roar into greatness, roar into our greatness. I thought roar, R-O-A-R, was an appropriate word for our Lion King theme, don't you think? Doesn't this work? And of course I love acronyms. But for this morning it means a little more than the lion's bellow. Today, roar stands for reach for your resplendency, open your observing eye. Can you see how that's? Okay, activate your awesomeness, and then rejoice in your resiliency. So let's look at number 1. R, reach for your resplendency. What the heck does resplendency mean?
Good question.
I know, it's a good question, isn't it? It means brilliance, magnificence, brightness, radiance, splendor. So when I say reach for your resplendency, I mean reach for your brilliance, your magnificence, your brightness, your radiance, your splendor. Or said another way, reach for your divine nature, because that's who you truly are. Now, why would I say reach, implying that it is something outside of you? Because we know that it's not. Of course it's not outside of you. So I don't mean reach outside, but rather sometimes we must reach deeply inside ourselves to find what we are truly made of and what we are truly here for. We must reach inside ourselves to find our greatness. I've heard it said, actually it was Reverend Michael Beckwith, who said, it's Dr. Beckwith, isn't it? Dr. Reverend Michael Beckwith, we often settle for making little bubbles and waves. But that isn't why we are here. Every one of us is here for a more resplendent purpose. We are here to express God's love, be God's light, and live God's truth. And this eternal reach implies the need to be willing to stretch beyond our comfort zone. There's a story about a priest named Father Leo Booth. He was a presenter at a spiritual program with Jean Houston. Talking before the presentation, Jean asked him what he was going to speak about, and when he started telling her the same thing he always talked about, she stopped him and said, stretch, Leo, stretch. That phrase rings in my head a lot of times when I'm being nudged to reach beyond my comfort zone. And I have to tell you that every time I have stretched, I have found something in me that I didn't know I had. I have found more and more of my resplendency. Excuse me. But on to number 2. Open our observing eye. It is a very, very important thing that as you make the decision to reach that, as you are reaching, that you open your observing eye. Here's our O, to see if there are thoughts, feelings, or actions that will hold you back from stretching into your greatness. Our hero Simba was being held back by self-blame for the tragic death of his father. He lived with the shame from the moment that he left Pride Rock. He hung on to it even as wise old Rafiki tried to remind him of who he was. He almost let it destroy him, but ultimately chose to open his eyes to see what it was he was doing. One of the biggest things that keeps us from stretching is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of success. How many of us have been afraid of succeeding? Yeah. Free-floating fear, just that fear that comes from, I don't know why, all of a sudden I'm really afraid. I mean, fear can be, almost seem like it's a real entity. So here's a little rhyme this morning that might serve you. Open your observing eye to see where your fears lie, so you can face them and say goodbye. On page 61 of Through the 365 Days of Science of Mind, it says we are afraid of greatness because we are so tied down to littleness. We clutch the littleness anxiously and jealously, but so precariously to our hearts. It is essential to see beyond the littleness to something bigger. None of us is as perfect in expression as we ought to be. So the challenge to each of us is to be great enough to rise in love, in charity, through understanding and compassion, including for ourselves. You know, it's so easy to say, well, I need to be more understanding and loving and compassionate to others, but we need to remember to be that with ourselves as well. We will always feel some fear when we reach that edge of that which we have known. We've come up to the edge. This is what I know, and this is what I don't know. When we reach the outer limit of our experience, the first time I had to give a treatment, when I was a practitioner in training, man, standing before that entire church, that was scary. That was really scary. Until I remembered what a veteran practitioner had told me. She says, you don't do the treatment. The treatment flows through you. Your job is to set your intention, to connect, and then get out of the way and let the treatment flow through you. And it's the same with giving talks. What is it they say about public speaking? It's the number one fear. Well, maybe behind spiders, I don't know. But for sure.
Bees.
Yeah, I know. Bees. There you go. All I have to do is think of bees, and this is easy, right? Okay, the next time you feel that you can't do it, that you don't have it in you to stretch into your greatness, just remember these facts about some very influential biblical figures. Noah had a drinking problem. Abraham was too old. Isaac was a daydreamer. Jacob was a liar. Leah was unattractive. Joseph was abused. Moses had a stuttering problem. Somehow that didn't come through with Charlton Heston, did it? Yeah. Anyway, Gideon was afraid. Samson was a womanizer. Jeremiah and Timothy were too young. David was an adulterer and a murderer. Elijah was suicidal. Isaac preached naked. Okay. Jonah ran from God. Job went bankrupt, and John the Baptist ate bugs. Peter denied Jesus. The disciples fell asleep while praying. Nobody here does that, I know. The Samaritan woman was divorced more than once. Paul was too religious. Timothy had an ulcer, and for heaven's sakes, Lazarus was dead. Okay? So no more excuses for not stretching. Open your observing eye. Be gentle with yourself, and be willing to release whatever will keep you from stretching, so that you can then, number 3, activate your awesomeness. This is our A. Activate your awesomeness. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. In The Lion King, this happened the moment Simba opened his eyes to his self-blame and shame and chose to return to Pride Rock and take his rightful place as king anyway. This is where we step into our greatness and trust that the universe has your back. I've heard it said that when we are willing to stretch, we will get butterflies. You know, you kind of feel those little butterflies in your stomach. The trick is to teach them to fly in formation. Christian Larson on The Pathway of Roses talks about what happens when you begin to activate your awesomeness. The interior you is the you created in the image and likeness of God. It is therefore evident that when you begin to live with the life and the power of the interior you, the expression of real greatness and real spirituality will begin. And from that moment on, you will not be limited to the power of the personal self. Instead, you will fill the personal self with the divine power from on high that is limitless, inexhaustible, and invincible. I'd say that's pretty awesome. On to number 4. R. Rejoice in our resiliency. And I think Annie experienced that this morning. She expressed it very well. Resiliency. And so as you are reaching, observing, and activating, there may be a time or two when things don't go exactly as you think they should. That doesn't mean retreat. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It only means now is the time to rejoice in the fact that you are a resilient being, able to persevere and stick to it. Let me give you an example. There was once a local dog show. Not exactly the kind of dog show you would expect. There was one with a very unusual contest. It was the dog jumping contest. Only 2 dogs remained. A feisty brown dog, full of bounce and keen to please its master, and his sleek black opponent, a dog that seemed so full of poise and confidence. Each dog was given 3 attempts to jump from a standing start up a wall to a ledge on top. At the first level, the brown dog jumped and struggled to pull himself up to the top, but missed, and he fell. He was lovingly caught by his master and encouraged to try again. He did, and just barely missed. On the 3rd and last attempt, somehow he managed to claw himself up to the top. Success! Then the black dog received his master's signal. He jumped to the top that first time. No problem. The contest continued. Each time the height was raised just a little bit, and each time the brown dog missed again, and then somehow struggled to the top on the 3rd attempt. The black dog jumped cleanly to the top. First time, every time. The crowd started to feel a little uncomfortable. It was obvious that the black dog would ultimately be the winner. Why didn't the judges stop this embarrassing situation and just declare the black dog the winner? The level was again raised. And as before, the gutsy brown dog tried and missed again, and then somehow, on his 3rd attempt, managed to claw his way to the top. Then it was the black dog's turn. He jumped, and for the first time in the entire event, he missed. He still had 2 more tries, but the black dog refused to try again. No matter how hard his master coaxed him, having missed once, the black dog simply gave up. The brown dog had won the contest. It seemed as if the black dog already knew what he could do and had developed little or no persistence, while the little brown dog was not yet done exploring her own potential. I love this statement. We should all shoot for the moon, because even if we miss it, we'll still be among the stars. So there you have it. This morning's formula, if you will, for roaring into your greatness. Reach for your resplendency, open your observing eye, activate your awesomeness, and then rejoice in your resiliency. This is all so that we can live from our own divine nature, so that we can wake up to our divinity and take our rightful place on the path of life unwinding, the ever upward circle of life. And so it is.